I'm Sharon Wylie, State Representative from America's Vancouver.
I'm Jake Fey, Chair of the House Transportation Committee from the 27th District in Tacoma.
Well, Jake, we've been on transportation together for a really long time, and you've got an important bill this year that I'm really interested in talking about. But I recall when we were developing the last package, we had over 100 stakeholder meetings in a very short period of time. And we heard over and over again that people need and understand that we need a replacement long-term for the gas tax. And you've got an important bill on this this year. That last package put substantial funding together to match Oregon and our federal requirements to fund the I-5 bridge, which is now a project of statewide significance. Thank you for that, by the way. But replacement for the gas tax is really important, and this year you've got that bill. Tell us about how you got there and what's been done to get us to this moment and what the bill actually does.
It all comes down to the fact that our gas tax revenues are reduced, have been reduced. Our peak year was in 2018. For this coming biennium, we are $343 million short, and the prospects of it getting any better are not good. What we wanted to do with the road usage charge was to replace the revenue we lose from the gas tax because of efficient vehicles and EVs so that we could have a reliable source of revenue to help pay for the projects that are so important to people across the state of Washington.
We recently had the first hearing on that bill, and there was testimony against it, but a lot of the testing programs that have been evaluating different methods of implementation and different ways of doing it have addressed some of those. Tell us about some of the testing and research and trial runs that have already been done on this particular package.
We've been on this road for over 12 years to take a look at the road usage charge, not just the state of Washington, but many states throughout the country, because really the gas tax is a mileage-based tax. It just doesn't hit consumers the same way because some vehicles are more efficient and they pay less gas tax, and some vehicles are very efficient and pay very little gas tax. So the whole concept here is we did testing with devices in vehicles, but also just the whole process of how to pay for it and the convenience of paying for it, and to understand because it's a different way of collecting the gas tax. Gas tax is collected in a very cheap way currently. This is going to be a bit more expensive. We tested about how it might work among states, Oregon, Idaho, British Columbia. So we've done some pretty good testing, and people that are familiar with it generally have a very positive feeling because it wasn't that much of a hassle to do this. But again, it's a better way to collect the equivalent of the gas tax than any other proposal has come by to this point.
There have been a lot of methodologies tested. One of the concerns that I've heard from people is, how can you do this? How can you possibly do this without invading people's privacy?
The prime method that we've talked about with this bill is that people would simply need to take a picture of the odometer reading, and that would be the basis for calculating how much is owed that would be paid with their annual vehicle registration. So most people are familiar with their phones and can take an odometer reading. It doesn't require there to be any kind of GPS or tracking of where people are at. It's on the honor system. You send us a picture of your odometer reading, and that's the end of it. So there's no intrusion into people's privacy.
Are there particular cutoff dates that people need to be aware of if they initially choose not to volunteer to get involved in this? How are the phases?
Right. So the first phase is 2 years just to get the system established. The second 2 years would be for voluntary purposes to test the system with EVs and hybrid vehicles, and it wouldn't be mandatory for those people that volunteer. And then 2 years after that, it would become mandatory for EVs and hybrids, and voluntary for people who drive internal combustion engine vehicles. So it's it will be 8+ years before it becomes fully operational.
And during that 8+ years, how do people find out where it's at any one point in time?
We would have the Department of Licensing communicating with the public, just like we do with other things like the impending Real ID notification for people for traveling. So it's on us to make sure that we provide as much information as we can so that people know that it's coming and what it's all about.
We also fund other parts of our transportation system like ferries. Our I-5 bridge is a big one, and you've been with me all along on that, and I really appreciate it, and my community appreciates it. We fund ferries, we fund the bridge, and there's a few other things. What are some of the biggies that we have to think about? And I know we split it up with local government for potholes and local roads as well.
We have the U.S.'s largest ferry system. Most states don't have that, and more than half of that cost for the ferry system is paid for by the users of the ferry system. And then obviously the funding that we have for the IBR actually came from the operating budget to make sure that project had the funding needed so that we could go to Oregon and say, we've got our $1 million, please come forward and contribute like we have. But we have more. We have a more difficult situation here. We've got in the state of Washington, lots of bridges, mountains, the ferry system. So it's a more challenging transportation system than what many other states have. If you're talking about Kansas, quite a bit of difference between what they need versus what we need in our state to have a good transportation system.
For all these years you've put in, I'm so glad that you are our transportation chair, and it's been a real pleasure to work with you on these complex subjects, and I think more people need to know and appreciate their transportation system and how hard you work and other people work to keep it going. Thank you.
You've not only been a great advocate for the needs of Southwest Washington, but a great partner in doing the things, sometimes very difficult, when in a committee structure to get things all the way through into the governor's desk. So you've been a great partner in all this work.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you for doing this video and talking with the people out there that we represent.
My pleasure.